There is real evil. It lurks in the darkest shadows and in our most ordinary towns. Between the worlds we see and the things we fear, there are doors. When they are opened, nightmares become reality.
A long time ago, I very briefly lived with my good friend Ben on a quiet street in Northville, Michigan, perhaps notable for being close to Detroit. It wasn't the nicest house, or block, or area for that matter, but the price was unbeatable for two broke young men like ourselves. Ben and I went way back to when we were like 9 years old, and at the time of this story, we worked the same job, and rooming together with him seemed like a great idea. On our first day there, we quickly figured out that the creepy-looking house across the street with the overgrown grass and bushes was abandoned, as were a lot of the houses around the area. In fact, something we somehow hadn't noticed before, there was even graffiti next to one of the front windows and on the fence. Our neighbors on one side seemed like creeps, and we didn't even want to approach them. The neighbor on the other side was an older dude, a very interesting, hippie-ish kind of guy. His name was Marv. He had long gray hair with a matching long gray beard. He seemed friendly at first, I guess, but also very weird and hard to talk to. We spoke with him on our second day there after work. He told us the place had been abandoned for as long as he could remember. That night, with the sun almost set, while we were sitting on the front stoop smoking, I looked to the house across the street and felt a little tingle in my stomach out of shock. I stood up, threw my cigarette onto the floor and crushed it. Ben looked at me confused, and I pointed to the window across the street. I was pointing at a face, which I saw staring at me through the lone upstairs window of the house. Do you see that? There's someone at that window. Ben looked at the window immediately, but I saw the person move their head away before he could see it. It's weird. I explained to Ben that I didn't even know if it was a male or female, old or young. The glass was just too foggy. All I knew was that I saw the eyes, and they were staring at us. Ben told me I was legitimately creeping him out. He believed me. We ran over to Marv's house to tell him, but strangely he didn't answer his door, even though we saw him watching TV in his tiny, messy living room through the window. The fact that the guy wouldn't answer creeped us out even more. Dude, what the fuck is going on with this place? Ben laughed, but the situation couldn't stay comical for long. Ben owned a katana. He brought it to mention and suggested we go across the street with it, break into the house from the backyard, and see what was going on. We were always adventurous, daring troublemakers as kids, so this was our natural response to the situation. When it got dark, we went across the street to the backyard, broke off the board holding the back door shut, and entered the house. We both had heavy-duty flashlights with us to light up basically any room we were in. The house was dusty, decrepit, but surprisingly seemed to remain untouched from the inside. No graffiti or signs of vandalism anywhere. Still, the place was disturbingly creepy, and we immediately joked that we should get the fuck out of there. But we pressed on. The first floor was pathetically small like our own. A kitchen, a tiny living room, and a dining room. There was no basement and one closet. The first floor was clear. We both agreed to check the upstairs. We tiptoed over to the stairs, and Ben, out of nowhere, screamed, "Is anybody up there?" "Dude, why the fuck would you do that?" I said quietly. Then we both froze in fear when we heard rapid stomping suddenly appear from above us. It was someone heavy, and it sounded like they were running over to the stairway. I literally felt like my heart stopped. Ben, the one with the katana, was the first to flee, grabbing my arm and tugging me with him. We went out the way we entered and ran back to the house, where we saw Marv just standing by his window, watching us. We didn't know what to do. He just intently stared at us as we froze to catch our breath in front of the house. We went inside, decided not to call the police, and moved out literally the next day. We explained to the landlord that the location was just too inconvenient for us, and we needed to leave ASAP. We drove away from that house and never looked back. Alright, so there are a couple of abandoned dorms on my college campus. They were shut down like 15 years ago because of... Actually, I don't really know why. Anyway, they're abandoned. It's rumored that they'll be renovated at some point, but that'll probably never happen. Naturally, it's also rumored that they're haunted. The school has the windows boarded up to prevent students from going in there. Because I fancy myself an urban explorer who isn't afraid of getting into any trouble, I decided about a week ago that I was going to break in and take a look around. Cut to last night. I didn't really have a plan per se, other than wear black and avoid getting caught. Security on campus has been tightened recently, but I didn't have any issues getting in unseen. I'll spare you the details, but basically, you'd be surprised what you could do with a crowbar and some vandalism. I ended up crawling in through a first-floor window. I found myself in an empty dorm room, illuminated only by my phone's flashlight. Now, one of the rumors is that the basement is haunted, so that's where I decided to go first. At the time, I thought I was some ballsy explorer, but I can't even express how thoroughly scared shitless I was. This building was dark, old, and smelled weird, and I thought that at any moment, something would come around the corner and tear me apart. It didn't help that my phone battery was being sucked dry by the flashlight app, so I was forced to use it very conservatively. Foresight is not my forte. Anyway, the basement. There wasn't any alleged faceless man ghost, or at least not that I saw. But this is where shit starts to get weird. Let me just set the scene. I very carefully descend the stairs. I open the door at the bottom and step into, well, a room. A completely normal room, although a little colder and with a stickier floor than I would have preferred, but otherwise completely normal. I swept my flashlight across the opposite wall, and there was another door. Probably just a laundry room, I thought. I'll go in there and take a look around and then get out of here before I piss myself. And then I could brag to my friends that I explored the basement of one of the abandoned dorms. But it wasn't the laundry room. I opened the door to a sea of red on the floor. There was a drain in the middle of the room, but it seemed to be clogged with various organic materials. Shiny, red organic materials. I caught a glimpse of a black pentagon-like thing on the ceiling. And then I fucking ran. Up the stairs, down the hall, and out of the window I busted earlier. I didn't stop running until I got back to my dorm. I laid in bed, wide awake, absolutely terrified. I managed to fall asleep sometime after my roommate left for class. I got up around 11 o'clock. I found a piece of paper that had been slipped under the door. Did you like what you saw? It was written in bright red ink. It's gotta be someone just fucking with me, but damn, they're good at it, because this legitimately creeped me out. I'm 16 years old and currently live next to a vacant house. Barely even a vacant house, more like abandoned. I never knew why the town never made an effort to fix it up and sell it. That never really bothered me though. Not until after a recent disturbing event. My bedroom faces the neighboring house in question, and sometimes on hot nights when I had the window open, I would feel like I could hear voices or moaning type noises coming from the neighboring house. Sometimes I even wondered if those sounds were teens sneaking into the house and having sex. But one night, that changed. It was a Thursday night in July. I was on my bed playing video games home alone when I muted the TV, thinking I heard something from outside. I went to my window and literally gasped when I heard a brief scream coming from inside the abandoned house. It wasn't drawn out at all. It only lasted about maybe a second, and I could just barely hear it. My adrenaline was rushing now. I wanted to get closer immediately. I shut off the lights and TV, took my airsoft gun as a mock weapon, and hopped the backyard fence over to the abandoned house's backyard. I knew the back door was left unlocked since I had been in there before with friends. I simply opened the back sliding door quietly and crept inside just a bit to listen for any more sounds. There was a weird, steady, creaking type noise. It was very low, but it was evident. It was also as dark as it could get in there. I flicked on the light attachment on my airsoft gun and aimed it in front of me, actually feeling pretty cool for a moment. I now stepped fully into the house, and the sound grew louder. I scanned the living room, completely empty, as were the other rooms on this floor. I crept over to the basement door, which was open. The sound was coming from down there. I felt my heart begin to race, and my gut instinct was telling me to turn around and leave now. But I guess my teen boy adrenaline and curiosity got the better of me. I took one step at a time down the stairway as the creaking sound got louder. And when the opening to the basement finally became visible, I aimed the gun light around the room. I froze when the light landed on something that was moving. It was a rocking chair. I got a serious pain in my stomach when I saw the back of somebody's head sitting in the rocking chair. When the light landed on them, the chair stopped rocking. I ran up the stairs, slammed the basement door shut, ran outside, slammed the back door shut, and locked my front and back door after getting back inside. I went to my room and stood at the window, watching the house. I then picked up the phone and called my dad. He seemed more surprised than concerned when I told him, confirming that nobody lives there. He calmly told me to get the police over there to check it out. When I hung up the phone, I looked out the window again. And right across from me, on the same level, there was somebody standing at the upstairs window of the abandoned house with the window open. I shut the blinds and called the police. They told me to keep watch through my window, and when I lifted the blinds back up, he was gone. I just hoped he was still in the house by the time the cops showed up. But of course, just my luck, the house was devoid of any people or furniture. Well, except for one thing, a single wooden rocking chair in the otherwise empty basement.